Breaking news into CBS Sports HQ. The Seattle Seahawks are signing defensive tackle Leonard Williams to a 3-year, $90 million extension. That's per multiple reports. Williams is coming off the third Pro Bowl season of his career, which of course culminated with that win over the Patriots in Super Bowl 60. This is now just the most recent big contract extension for Seattle this offseason because deals were already given out to Jackson Smith-Njigba and Devin Witherspoon. Now, for even more on Leonard Williams and the payday for him, we bring in my guy, Lijay Douzable. Lijay, I know that Leonard is your guy. How do you feel seeing him get paid like this and know that he has so much value in Seattle?
It's that exact. This is great business by the Seattle Seahawks, not for just what Leonard Williams does on the field, but off the field. I've been able to watch Hard Knocks with the Seattle Seahawks for training camp during this training camp session. It's been great to see Leonard Williams come into his leadership role. There's times where Mike Macdonald, the defensive coordinator and head coach, will go out and say, we're not playing right on defense. And Leonard Williams will be next to him and say, hey, coach, what you need me to tell the guys, right? That just shows you the growth in leadership. And then also when you look at Leonard Williams, he's been a top 3 D tackle in the NFL over the last 3 years. The funny thing is, as he's gotten older, he's gotten better. You hear that old cliche, aging like fine wine. That's what Leonard Williams is doing. He's getting better with age. And I sat down and talked with him this offseason. He was like, I don't know what it is, dudes. He's like, I feel like I could play at this level for another 3 or 4 years. He's found a new home in Seattle, and Seattle is doing good business by getting him in this extension. And you see it right there over the last 2 seasons. At the defensive tackle position, and it says players over 300 pounds, #1 in sacks, #1 in quarterback hits, #4 in tackles, and then #2 in defensive snaps. He doesn't come off the field. He is a terror for quarterbacks and interior offensive linemen. Great job, Seattle, locking in your leader on defense.
32 years old, and as you mentioned, that he said he feels like he has 3-4 years left on his body to be able to play at such a high level. When you put the pen to paper now before the season begins, what is the next step of the mindset and the mentality to make sure that, hey, you're making do for everything you're now owed?
So now you're not concerned about the contract, Zach. Now you can just focus on football because he was going into the last year of his last contract extension that he signed with the Seattle Seahawks. So now he's there for the foreseeable future. He can just lock in on football. And when you look at the money he's going to get, 30 per year, puts him in top 5 at the D tackle position where he deserves to be. I just talked about it earlier. He's a top 3 defensive tackle in football, and you see it right there. #5 on that list, we just saw Jalen Carter get an extension, Quentin Williams and Jeffrey Simmons right before training camp. Now Leonard Williams is in that rare air, being up there with the top defensive tackles where he belongs because he was only due around $15 million, which was a massive underpay for what he provides that Seattle team. Again, not just the defense, but the leadership skills that he brings off the field and into that locker room. So now he can just lock in on football. He doesn't have to be concerned about his contract. And his family loves Seattle. They have found their home there. Now he's going to be a home guy that most likely finishes his career in Seattle.
What are your thoughts on what that Seattle defense can do again this year and the contributions that they might get from Williams?
Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy, Zach, make up the best D-tackle duo in all of football, and I don't even think it's close. And that's why people were concerned going into the season, say, well, they lost Tariq Woolen, they lost Kobe Bryant in the back end. Maybe they won't be as good. As long as you got Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy, you're going to be all right on defense. And they have the mad scientist and Mike Macdonald. I was sitting down talking with Leonard Williams, and I asked him, what is so fun about this defense? He was like, with Mike Macdonald, you just never know how we're going to line up. He really likes to use Leonard Williams' versatility. He lines him up at all 3 positions. He lines up at edge. He lines up at nose tackle over center. And he lines up at 3 technique. Matter of fact, so much, Zach, that in Pro Bowl voting, they had Leonard Williams down as a defensive end. But by trade, he's a D tackle. He was voted an All-Pro D tackle last year. But when you look at the program guide, they have him as a defensive end. So he loves how Mike Macdonald keeps it fresh, keeps it exotic, moves things around. He's a mad scientist on that defense. And yes, they lost a few pieces in the secondary, and there's some questions with that secondary with the depth. Nick Emanwari still hasn't participated in practice. They lost Bud Clark to an ankle injury for the rest of the year, so depth will be tested. But the thing that makes a defensive back's job a lot easier, when you have those 2 D tackles in the middle, Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams, they still got those big hogs in the middle, so they're going to create havoc and make the quarterback throw the ball a lot faster than he wants to.
Lijay, this next question might seem a little bit out of left field, so maybe just stick with me here. You look at Aaron Donald, and you figure, okay, he's probably, maybe going to come out of retirement at some point here during this football season. Seeing the money that defensive tackles are getting, what they're being paid, in any way, do you think that this might just itch up the desire of AD to want to play, knowing I can make a little coins here for a year or two?
Well, not so fast, Zach, because there's some business that has to be done with the LA Rams. Remember, Aaron Donald retired with, I believe, 1 or 2 years still left on his deal. So he's currently under contract for what he was going to make before he retired. And Sean McVay talked about that, saying AD is going through his process, but there's some business to take care of if we're going to make this thing happen, if AD is truly on board with coming back, because there was still some time left on his contract. So I don't know if the money is the thing that is kind of itching at Aaron Donald to come back. Now, it is ridiculous what the market has done for the defensive tackle position, and I love it. Truly, I do, because talking to quarterbacks in the league, the one thing they hate is that interior pass rush pressure. And if you can do that by just rushing and not blitzing, it gives your defense an advantage. So long, the defensive ends were getting crazy quarterback money, and people weren't paying D tackles. Now, defensive tackles, Jalen Carter just signed $38 million a year. That is quarterback money, and it's because those defensive tackles can change the game from the interior. I don't think that weighs on Aaron Donald in the decision to potentially come back because, like I said, he still had some time left on his contract, so some business has to be done with the Rams if he were to come back.
Got to make the money make sense. Got to handle all your business. They call him Lijay Douzable, a.k.a. Mr. Cafe Cinnamore, tapped in with us here.
This out. QBs this preseason clean versus under pressure. Fernando Mendoza has been fine when clean, but a huge problem when pressured. Out of 45 qualifying QBs, number 44 in EPA and attempts there, 42 in accuracy, and then 4 of 11, which is 36%. 9 hits taken, 2 sacks, and 1 INT. So obviously more work for the former Heisman Trophy winner. Pretty good. Brian McFadden tapping in with us for more in here when it comes to the NFL. And let's start there with the rookie there, B-Mac. A little bit of a learning curve. We just saw that in the numbers. What should we expect from him in terms of growth and what we're seeing, and what have you heard about his progress?
Well, before we talk about the growth for Fernando Mendoza, B, I think it's safe to say that is the issue for any quarterback. When they're being pressured, they're not at their best. That's why these edge rushers are getting paid the way they're getting paid, because that position is a premium position. If you can put pressure on these opposing quarterbacks, granted it could be a rookie, 9-year guy, 13-year guy, they're going to struggle. I can care less who the quarterback is. So I'm not surprised to see that stat with Fernando. And heck, if you go back to a year ago in 2025, remember Geno Smith was tied for the most in terms of being sacked last year. He was sacked 55 times. So that offensive line was horrible a year ago, mostly because of injuries. But in terms of the expectations for Fernando Mendoza, the good thing about this situation for him, I know there are a lot of naysayers and spectators that believe he should start day one. Well, Clint Kubiak has already made it known to all of us, B, Kirk Cousins is going to be the starting quarterback week 1. So they can gradually bring Fernando Mendoza along as need be, right? And when his time is there, when he is ready, guess what? He will be in the lineup. But when you look at some of the struggles that we've seen from Fernando, he's been working with some of the twos on the offensive line. So the continuity and the chemistry hasn't been there in terms of the protection. And that's why we see some of the questionable numbers that you just laid out for us.
I want to take a look at the schedule, because if we are assuming that Kirk Cousins will be the starter, and let's just say Fernando at some point gets a shot at the season, let's say Kirk makes it to week 5. Then you got to deal with the Bills, the Rams. We don't know if AD's coming back. Then week 9, you got the Niners, the Seahawks, and the Broncos, and then the Browns. You got Jared Verse there. How difficult might it be when you're talking about dealing with a young rookie and those type of pass rushes throughout a season?
Well, it will be very, very difficult. Like I said, I can care less if you're talking about a rookie quarterback or a 10-year quarterback, 10-year vet quarterback. When you look at those defensive units that you just laid out for us, those guys are very, very good in putting consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But for the Raiders and for Fernando, if he is implementing into the lineup midway, That's why you invested the money you invested in Tyler Linderbaum to be the quarterback of the offensive line. You have a healthy Colton Miller back in the lineup, JPJ also. So you have some quality guys in terms of health that are healthy now that were not healthy a year ago. And everything flows once the offensive line is doing what they're supposed to do, especially out there in Las Vegas with the Raiders. Because you can have Kirk Cousins, you can have Derek Carr, you can have Rich Gannon, you can have anybody. It doesn't matter. If the offensive line is not doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to struggle.
Over in Houston, you can say the same thing in terms of their offensive line, and it got worse yesterday with Braden Smith carted off the field with apparent foot injury. That was Wednesday. But bad news for C.J. Stroud, who is healthy right now. But when you put it behind one of the worst O-lines we saw a season ago, if you're the Texans, are you worried about this protection already out the gate?
Yeah, you should be, because I feel like that's why we've seen a decline in C.J. Stroud. It's not about the individual skill set and can he play quarterback still. No, it's about the lack of protection. If you go back to his rookie campaign where he put forth his best effort as a professional quarterback, look at the sound protection that he had to work from behind. And then outside of that, they have really digressed in terms of consistent protection for the young quarterback going back to a year ago. And now you talk about not knowing the status of Braden Smith, a guy who they brought in to really help shore up the offensive line. Who knows? I mean, I can tell you this much. When they moved on from Laramie Tunsil, right, I understand financially it was more of a business decision, but he was your best offensive line on a bad offensive line, right? He was your best offensive lineman on a bad offensive line, and you moved on from him. And since then, you've been still trying to figure things out to protect the blind side and protect the entire pocket for C.J. Stroud. So for me, if I'm Houston, I think you need to find a way to get sound protection, because clearly C.J. Stroud is a better quarterback when he has a comfortable pocket to work from within.
I want to stay in that division there when it comes to them. The Colts, obviously, it's not offensive line. It's more when it comes to receivers. Josh Downs going down. He's going to miss the start of the season with a calf injury. Outside of that, you got to deal with Alec Pierce is not back from ankle surgery. Tyler Warren is dealing with a groin injury. Michael Pittman, he's at your old stomping ground with the Steelers right now. How do you deal with this receiver room getting thin too early?
Well, you got to rely on the running game. You know, Jonathan Taylor is one of the best backs in the National Football League. He just got a new deal, and you're going to have to rely on him. You talk about, man, Alec Pierce, you know, they gave him a nice, handsome ransom, right, in terms of contract. He's been out the majority of camp. Now Josh Downs, a versatile wide receiver, he's been out. You know, you talk about Tyler Warren, first rounder from a year ago, he's been nursing a groin injury. That's why they went out and got the seasoned vet Keenan Allen, because they need bodies. They need bodies at the pass catching position. And oh, by the way, Daniel Jones is coming off a Achilles injury from a year ago, right? And you don't know how mobile he will be in terms of just orchestrating the offense, because mobility is a part of his game. So I'm a bit concerned for the Indianapolis Colts hearing these injuries, because like you said, when you look at the overall pass catching position, right, in 2025, I felt like they were in a better space than they are currently in 2026 when you look at the pass catching position, combining tight ends and wide receivers, because to your point, Michael Pittman Jr. was a part of that pass catching position a year ago. He's no longer there. And when you're dealing with the injuries now, depth comes in concern as well, because who knows when Alec Pierce will be 100% cleared. The same can be said for Josh Downs. And clearly those two guys are the top two wide receivers for this offense.
Something to watch there when it comes to the Colts in 2026. The league taking new measures of making the game safer, maybe some new rules there, possible suspensions when it comes to hip drop tackle, horse collar tackle, launching, hit on defensive players.